Hello, friend. Welcome to the Happy Family Club. We're delighted to have you join us. Our mission is to help you have a happier, stronger family. We do that by bringing you the world's greatest experts in family, marriage, parenting, and relationships. We interview them to discover their secrets, their strategies, their techniques, and bring them to you so that you can cherry pick exactly what you need right now to have more success and more joy in your family.
And if you enjoyed this interview, we encourage you to share it with your friends and your family, and come on to the happyfamilyclub.com and see if you can find more information that's going to help you and your family be happier.
Again, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the interview. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Happy Family Club podcast. We are so excited to have you here today. Margie and I have been looking forward to this interview for quite some time because there's a lot of things that parents deal with that are challenging and difficult, and being able to simplify those and smooth that out is exactly what our guest does best. So we're excited to have you here. And it was by way of an official introduction. Margie will give you an official introduction, but Dr. Sheryl Ziegler is here, and we're just so excited to have you. So thank you very much for being with us today. We appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sheryl. We're so happy you're here. And just so everybody knows, Sheryl has worked to create this community for parents to feel included and with their teens and help them work through amazing things in their life. She's the author of this great book. It's called Mommy Burnout.
By the way, your 10 signs of mommy burnout had me in stitches. That was awesome. So
great.
And it was like serious. Like if you pull up your house and you feel dread and anxiety, like
yeah,
and other things.
You got mommy burnout. Yeah. But she's been all over the media, appearing in over 100 news shows, which is amazing. And yeah, she's been an instructor, amazing online courses. She's got her book. She's got a website. We'll tell you a little bit about it at the end of the interview, but we're really excited for all the great influence that she's having. She's got the Child and Family Therapy Center, right? That you got started in 2004, which is amazing. She's a doctorate in psychology, licensed professional counselor. We could go on and on about really Sheryl. It's just incredible. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And it's not really just popped in my mind, but I remember, in terms of your media contributions, I seem to remember that you really have a specialty in taking really challenging things that are happening in the media and then talking about how to talk with your children about that. Like I saw a little blurb that you had about how do we address, what's going on over in the Middle East right now? And that's hard. And I saw some of the school shootings you addressed so beautifully. And like, how do you help children through that? So anyway, that's not really maybe with that I'll come up, but I just wanted our listeners to know, like, you are so adept at addressing things that a lot of people kind of shy away from or just are clueless about how to handle. And so anyway, we're excited to have you. That's why I've been looking forward to this interview. So thank you. Okay. I really want to dig into your insights onto the question that we love to ask, which is, what's the key principle when applied will help, inspire greater family happiness. But before we go there, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Because your list of accomplishments, your education, your contribution to the world is long, and just a lot of people don't put that much time and effort into getting there. And we just wonder what your backstory is for doing all of that. There's got to be a reason. So let's hear it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. We all have a story, right? And thank you for the opportunity to share my story. And so let's see, where do I start? So I guess I'll start by saying that I am the child of a teenage immigrant. My mom immigrated here when she was 12, got pregnant with me when she was 17, and had me when she was just a couple weeks before she was 18. So I had a teen mom. She was single. We lived in New York City. And, truly for the first 7 years of my life, a lot of really interesting things. I was raised on, government assistance, welfare, food stamps. I never went to preschool. I Really just spent a lot of time with family. Spanish was my first language, although I've totally lost it. So I'll get to that point. How that happened. But, I think by all intents and purposes, if you look at me on paper, I had a lot of early childhood adversity, but this is the big but that's very relatable to your platform. The one savior that I had was family. And I didn't know. When you're a child, you don't know that you have money, you don't have money. I mean, you those things don't matter.
Right.
But what I had was this incredible extended family around me that loved on me, watched me. I never had like a babysitter. I just was always with family. And I had one particular aunt who was also my godmother, who just always said to me unequivocally, like she said it in a way that I really believed her, you're going to do great things. You're going to do great things. And she said it to me so much that I believed it. I actually truly grew up like, well, she says I'm going to do great things. So I'm going to do great things.
Oh.
So, I will say, while those first 7 years of my life looked, I was being raised obviously by a young mother and those kind of things, I just had so much love around me. And so I didn't have formal education around me. We didn't have a lot of things, but I had love. Yeah. And I know now, I mean, it took a long time into being an adult to understanding and appreciating that, because I only really even maybe analyze it so much because people would ask me, but how did you persevere through so much adversity? And at first I just didn't have an answer. A lot of times I'd say, I think I was just blessed. I think this is my story. This was the way it was supposed to be, which I still do feel that way. But I also know that there are elements that created this opportunity. So, those were the first 7 years. And then I moved out of New York City and an hour north of New York City, and had a really different experience where I was not surrounded by lots of family. That was taken away from me. My culture was taken away. My language was taken away. And so from, for those years, it was an adjustment. And I think that the beautiful second part of my story is that while I felt like my family had gotten taken away from me and I wasn't surrounded by that same level of love and unconditional positive regard, my friends' families took me in. So then my friends' families became like surrogates, and just there are things that they said and did that, again, I look back now and I say, I did get the opportunity to tell one of my best friends growing up, her mother, I did get to tell her, I want you to know how much it means and meant to me, the things that you would say to me. Again, very positive. You're beautiful, you're smart. And so that was a game changer too. So, my story is really all over, a lot of different experiences, a lot of adversity, but also a lot of family love. And that is key. Community and family and love is key to at least my story, but I also believe the human condition.
Yeah. So I have a follow-up question on that. It's an awesome story, and I want to hear a little bit more on that. But we live, at least in my perspective, we live in a very polarized world. Maybe other people don't feel that way, but I think that there's a lot of polarization out there, and there's a lot of families that struggle, and I think there's a lot of parents and adults that struggle with just seeing the dark side of things, right? And so being able to give that kind of nurturing and love and positive feedback to their children or to their, friends that come over or whatnot, sometimes can be hard. I wonder, again, this is maybe a little on a tangent, but the question comes to my mind. What would be your insight on how parents can sort of shift that lens so they can provide that nurturing, and what would they need to do in order to do that?
Yeah. So that nurturing to their own children or other people's children?
Exactly.
Both. So both. I was like,
I mean, it's like Margie and I are in a situation where we have our 11 children, but our 11 children, that has a multiplicity of friends that come around, right? And there's all the associations. And so we find ourselves regularly in a situation where we feel like we're not only parenting our children, but these other children come into our lives that have different family experiences. And we're like, oh, we want to, nurture and love on them. So I think that I think that it kind of, I'd love to hear your insights on both of those questions.
Oh yeah. Well, I love that. I mean, so yes, with your 11 children, you have a village that comes in and out of your sphere. And one of the things that I would say is just by showing one another love, just by cooperating in the kitchen or working on a project together, or creating a meal, that in and of itself, even if you never said a word to any of those other kids and your own, they're seeing, they're witnessing love, communication, teamwork, collaboration, laughter, maybe sometimes some conflict, and hopefully maybe some of the resolution, like, oh yeah, we can disagree on something. And this is the way we resolve our disagreements, which could look really different from the way other people, resolve or address their disagreements. So it starts as just modeling. Yeah. Modeling is so important. You're modeling family and family time and what meals look like. Whatever meals look like in your house, I assure you look very different in many other people's houses.
You are right.
You're right. Yeah, I'm very sure of that. So I think just for the two of you in terms of modeling, and then when it comes down to it, let's just say this is what I believe, which like you said, maybe not everybody even thinks of it this way, but I love the idea that we are in community and that we can, whatever it is, talk to other people's kids, at times reprimand other people's kids. I don't mean harshly, but I mean saying something like, in our house, we don't speak that way. Or in our house, we share, right? Yeah. Like that's what I mean by reprimand. Yeah. And not everybody's like that. That's something that I think in society, people are like, well, did you say something to my kid? Yes, I did. And say something to mine. If my kid is not doing something, feel free to tell them. Yeah. I don't have a problem with that, right? I mean, and I think we've gotten away from that. And we are so much worse off for that. And that was very much a part of mommy burnout, which is we lead to stress and burnout when we think we are doing this on our own, when we don't ask for help, when we don't accept that, feed my child or guide them in some way or let them know what's right from wrong. And if they come home and they tell me and I see it differently, then that's my job as a parent to say, oh, well, that's the way they think about it. Here's the way I think about it, right? Yeah. Communicate to them. So I just see so much that the two of you especially have an opportunity to do just by being role models, but also hopefully taking it a step further and just living your values in front of other people is one of the best things I think that you can do. Just live your values truthfully, in integrity. It's one thing to say, hey, these are our values. And it's another thing to truly live them. And I think kids can perceive when people are living true to their values. They're walking their talk. Yeah. And I think that's really key.
So
integritous. Yeah.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Children are astonishingly good at, filtering out like fluff and lies and, fake and wow, they can get to the heart of the matter really quick.
They sure can
articulate it. They live into it. Yeah, they feel it. So
yes. And that's what I was going to say. Starting at young ages, the reason why they're so perceptive is because they don't have advanced verbal skills. And so they can't talk their way through things, or they're not doing mental gymnastics in their head about, well, maybe they did this because of, nope, they just see it for what it is and they experience it in their bodies. They know, oh, when I come over to your house, I feel good. I can't tell you why. I can tell you a good story. A couple of weeks ago, I saw a new client, a new little girl. She's 8. And I have a swing room in my office, and she was moving and she's swinging. And that's the intention of this swing room, is just to allow kids to move. Yeah. And she said to me about maybe 40 minutes in, I just feel so good here. Mm-hmm. I don't even know why though. Yeah. I feel so good here. And so I would say a couple things here and there, and I could tell it wasn't resonating. I said, well, maybe it just feels good to get to talk. And then I'm just listening. And she was like, I think it's more than that. And then she just kept moving and moving. And we never got to the answer at the end, but because she's 8, she could not articulate exactly why she felt so good being there, but she felt it and she just shared it spontaneously. And that is the way kids are. And I'm sure there were multiple things, right? Could have been the way I looked at her, the way I smiled at her, the way she was moving probably felt good. She didn't have to sit still in a seat.
Yeah.
Right. And be stressed that like, I'm supposed to just sit in this chair and answer questions, like it was a kid-friendly space. There were probably multiple reasons, but I love remembering that the younger the child is, the more perceptive in truth they actually are.
Yes. Wow.
I love that.
That's amazing insight. I'm so glad I asked that question. So you're now officially invited to have dinner at our place, and you can play on the tree swing in the back as much as you want.
I will. I always tell people, if you offer me something, I will take you up on it.
Sweet. Or
there you go.
Next time, do you still have family in New York?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're halfway in between Denver and New York. We're in Arkansas, so come on over. So, okay. Well, thank you. So can you pick up on your story just a little bit more, because you moved, an hour north, things all changed. And then, at some point you made decisions about where you were going to go into school and, this amazing, counseling that you do. So kind of give us a little bit of insight on that. And then we better get to my one core question here.
Okay. So, what happened was, I remember I got a journal for my 13th birthday. It was a purple journal that I still have. And on the front cover, when it had a lock on it, and you open up and it's like, name, age, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wrote, I want to be a psychologist. I want to be a psychologist. I want to be the Barbara Walters of psychology. That's what I said.
Yeah. Barbara Walters.
I want to be the Barbara Walters. Like, who knows that at 13? I have no idea. So I wrote psychologist. It was not even spelled correctly. And so when I went into high school and I was probably in 8th grade then, when I knew that I knew that I wanted to help people, listen to people. And then when I went into high school and you have your meeting with your guidance counselor, he said, well, do you know what you want to do? I said, yes, I want to be a psychologist. And he said, oh, you're going to have to go to school for a long time. I said, okay, how long? And he said, 10 years. And I said, okay, so where do I start?
Yeah.
It was just
like,
yeah, great. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I literally did it. I have 3 psychology degrees. I never skipped a beat. I did everything really pretty fast. I knew this is just what I always wanted to do. And I think that probably comes from having had so many different experiences and going through many things in my life. I think I just had this sense, like, people would just say to me young, like middle school, high school, like, you're just so easy to talk to. And I think because I didn't judge anybody, I'm just not here. It's not my place to judge. Right. And I think that's something that is so rare today, to have a listening ear that you feel is really not judgmental, that isn't going to shame you or tell you what to do, but they're just really there to listen. I think that's probably the way I was when I was younger, and that just continued. So that's how I got to be a psychologist. And it's kind of great. It's like something, it's not working with my own kids, but if they'll, like, my daughter will say, oh, I would be a psychologist, but I don't want to go to school that long. And so I'm like, oh, but you do you do 4 years. And she's like, 4 years. And I'm like, yeah. And then, I went into a master's, but then I worked for 2 years. So I try to tell her, like, and then you can take some small breaks. But yeah, for me and my personality, that just worked. Just tell me what to do and I'll just do it.
I love it.
Amazing.
It's awesome. And I love the fact that you had this sense and then you just carried through with it. And I think that there's an enormous amount of power in that focus. And I think there's also an enormous amount of power in looking at the circumstances you grew up in and seeing the value. I think that there is a lot of people that might look at it and go, oh my goodness, like, I had this terrible childhood and that's why I'm so messed up, is because I grew up in the Bronx and I didn't have any support, and then I moved out of town and then I didn't have any more support and I had on welfare, and so
the victim mentality gets developed. Yeah.
And I think that it's really powerful, because sometimes we take that victim mentality and we impose it on our children, and we create this culture that just multi-generational. And you opted out of that. And I love the fact that it's just a change in the story. It's the exact same circumstances that so many other people had in your situation. And you had this, you've had this beautiful gift or decision to change that around and say like, oh, actually it was really powerful. I had this gift of love for my family, and I did this gift of love for my friends' parents. And, you know, and you see this wonderful thing and you decided to use that for people's good. So, you know, as parents, we get to define the narrative of our house, really, and what that story looks like to us and to our children. And I really want everyone listening to this to hear that, like, this isn't a fluff thing. It's not like, you know, we don't get to decide, you know, I can't drop something and pretend like gravity doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. So we don't get to decide that, but we do get to decide the narrative of how we approach life and how we see things and how we feel about things. And teaching that to our children is really powerful. It's just incredibly powerful, as exampled in your life, Sheryl. So awesome.
It is. I appreciate what you're saying, and I do want to say for anyone listening, so it doesn't feel like fluff. I don't know that I had this ability to see the positive until I was probably in my late 20s.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know that I ever was also either like victim.
Yeah,
I wasn't that. I don't know that I think I saw some of the gifts. I guess I will say that. I think I knew I could relate to anybody. I did go from poverty. Then my mom married a New York City police officer. So then I went to, like, you know, struggling to get by, but middle, sort of lower, maybe middle class.
Yeah.
I went from being an only child to the youngest of 6. Right, with a step family, a blended family, and then another divorce, then my only half brother was born when I was 12. Then there was another marriage, right? So I've been through a lot, and as a child, yeah, during it was hard sometimes, you know, during it. And I think that once I just had some space from it, and once I was in a different environment and I was studying just human behavior, you're right. I not only did I not have a victim mentality, but when I still till this day hear somebody who's 40, 50 years old say, well, it's because of the way I was raised. I'm like, no, you are in control of your narrative. You have agency over yourself. You might have to work at that. But this is a mindset. You can wake up every morning and see everything that's gone wrong, or you can wake up every morning and look for what's going right. That is a choice. And I do believe that is a choice. I also think it's almost like a muscle. You have to practice it. If it doesn't come naturally, but practice, I promise, will get you there. And so I do feel like, again, it was part gift, and it was also just part also changing my environment and being intellectually stimulated and challenged in a way that really it just never occurred to me at all to be like, woe is me or anything like that. It was just like, and then once I became older, in my maybe mid to late 20s, I started to realize, oh, this is a power. This is a power. Like, I have been through a lot of adversity, and that will help me in life. And I just saw it that way. So that had a couple of years of, you know, some shame and not wanting people to know my story and all of that, you know, even just being in New York and saying, oh, I was born in Harlem. I was raised in Washington Heights, and I spent most of my time in the South Bronx. You know, and I was like,
no stigma with any of those things, right?
Right. I just skipped over that part and was just like, here I am. You know, like living more in suburbia. So it's been an evolution. It was an evolution in like my 20s to mid 30s of really, I think, fully revealing myself.
Yes.
And so that was a process. So I do want people listening to know it's not like I was always this open and self-actualized, but now I realize, now this is the thing. I can work with anybody, and I mean anybody, because every single one of us has a story. We all have a story of loss. There's some tragedy, there's some trauma. There isn't anybody who's going to get through life without some of that. And some people have it more than others. And I realize now that once you have gone through something, if you work through it, you actually have better outcomes. Yes. You are more resilient. So I always say to people who they're like, I want my kid to have more grit. And you got to go through tough things to get grit. You can't get gritty without having some challenge.
Yeah. So cool. And what I love about that is that you did so yeah, you weren't always this way, but you did make it through. You did evolve. You did progress. And again, what a message of hope, because like you said, we all can start on that. We can all exercise that muscle and we can all move forward. So it's really cool. And your story reminds me, I don't know how familiar you are with the author C.S. Lewis, but he wrote a book called The Great Divorce. And there's a little vignette in that book where they're talking about heaven and hell and religious things, whatnot. But the principle I love is that he said, no matter what your past story was, when you immediately begin looking toward what he calls the high mountains or heaven, then everything that's ever happened to you before will become a piece of heaven. And he says, and if you decide to be miserable and frustrated and the victim, then everything that's ever happened to you before will actually be a piece of hell. And it's a very powerful little thing there. And so that reminds me of you. It's like, you did go through hard times, but looking back, as you've refocused that lens, all of it became sort of a piece of your heaven or a piece of your story right now that's so productive. So anyway, thank you for sharing that. Totally not where I was planning on going with this interview, but that was like so powerful, because we do all face the challenges and the trauma and the difficulties. Nobody gets out of here alive, right? We're all going to go through the struggles. So anyway,
but it's how we respond to it.
Yeah,
that
I appreciate
really makes a difference.
Okay, so
ask her the question.
Yeah, let me ask you the question. Margie's like, can you get to this already? Like,
that's fine.
So I would love to hear your insights on what is a key principle that, when we apply it and live it, can really impact our family happiness. So what's your answer to that question?
Oh, does anybody ever cheat and give like 3 answers?
Yes, you can cheat.
Yes.
Over deliver for us, show. We're ready for it. Go.
I do want to over deliver. If that's a positive reframe of like, I can't focus on one. I mean, okay, I'll do it. I'll do macro and then a micro. How about that?
Yes.
There you go.
There's a, like, the macro for me is a family needs to be clear on their values. And what I say about that is, if I give you a list, which I do have in my office, let's say of 50 values, they all sound great. Yeah. Loving, generous, kindness, patience. You're just like, well, all of these things. And I say, sure, there's 50 things on here, but we cannot focus on and prioritize 50 things. Right. So that gets us spread thin. That means you're going to be doing just a little bit of everything. If you think I'm going to be all of those wonderful traits. So I really encourage families to do almost like a family mission statement, the way a company has one. And you focus 3 to 5. 5 is max. 3 to me is probably ideal. 5 is max. And those are your guiding principles. So when you have a 16-year-old that says they want to stay out late past their curfew, they ask to extend it. If you're having a hard time making that decision, you go back to your family value statement and you say, where does this fall within this? Right? Like, what would my 5 core values, where would it lead me? Would it maybe being flexible is one of them? Like, we will be flexible and creative, right? And you go, we're going to say, yes, they can stay out an hour later tonight because we're really focusing on flexibility, for an example. Or you have an 8-year-old that says, they want a second dessert. And you go in your, struggling, maybe they're whining, they're making a scene, you don't know what to do. And so you go back to your family value statement and you say, okay, we talked about fairness is really important to us. And there's not enough dessert to give everybody who may want seconds. So actually, even though we're struggling a little bit, our family values say fairness and equity is really important to us. So we're going to say no to that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like your guiding light. It anchors you. And those 2 examples they're so different from each other. But obviously the 2 of you know, on a daily basis, I mean, with 11 kids, you're probably making over 1,000 decisions a day.
Yep.
Right. And they're little, like, oh, I forgot my lunch. Can you bring it to school? Oh, tomorrow I have a project I didn't tell you. Can you go get me clay? Can you, whatever it is. So
all the stuff,
all the things, and they're from little things to, I forgot something. Will you bring it? Still, some parents will sit and go, I don't know. Is this a good time to teach them a lesson? Like we tell them all the time, get organized, right? And why will I drop it off for Janie, but I won't drop it off for Jack? right? And that's another thing, right? I think it's really important that families understand that we are not raising our kids the same exact way. They're individual human beings, right? So you can have your guiding principles, your 3 to 5 values that really anchor you. Of course, underneath that, you can have lots of other things, but I know that I've shared some of our top values with people, and they are different from my very best friends, even though we're best friends, right? And so, and that just means it guides me. That's all. It guides me. So I think that's one thing that's really important. And then that's the macro. And on the micro level, I think how to influence those values into your actual life requires presence. And what I see are really busy, distracted, stressed families.
Yeah.
Right? Where presence seems like a luxury. Like, oh, presence, really? Do you cook and clean and work and blah, 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 blah? And it's like, yeah. And even through all the things we have to do, how can we find a way to be present and engaged? I didn't say all day long. I didn't say for 7 hours a day, but that when you are interacting with your children, with your family, they really have your undivided attention. Your eyes and your body say, I am fully committed to talking to you about this right now.
Yeah.
And if I can't, I am modeling for you that I say, this sounds like this is really important, or it sounds like you really need help with something. And right now, I'm not able to do that. In an hour or tonight, I will be able to do that. So that you're setting your own boundary that when I interact, when my kid really, they need my attention, my focus, we need to have a conversation. I am doing just that. I'm not cooking and on my iPad or my phone and trying to get emails out and doing all these other things. That's what I see. I just see very busy, stressed families. And I think we're missing opportunities for connection.
Wow. Okay. So the macro piece is having those core values that give us guiding. And then the micro is being able to be 100% present so that we don't, and I think part of it is that these things that come up in our family life all the time, it's like these little micro crossroads that are happening all the time.
Every day. Decisions
that the children are making, the interaction that we have with each other. It's this constant nonstop thing of interaction, decisions, and like you said, thousands of stuff every day. And then being able to focus and be present. So I love that, Sheryl. That is so very helpful. Can we dive into a couple of these a little bit more?
Yeah.
So I'm wondering about, when you look at you've got this list of 50 values. How do we guide parents through selecting, down to even the optimal 3, right? And what's the mental and emotional struggle that parents go through that you see getting down to from 50 down to 3, and how do you guide them through that?
Yes, it is a whole process. And I will tell you that some people I know have gone to Pinterest. There's literally, little things where people like family values. And they're like, if they don't do it in the office with me, or sometimes they come and they go, we started it. Look, we did our homework. Right. And so what I say to them is, don't cross anything off, because I would say of the 50 values, there's almost nobody that would say, oh yeah, generosity, not interested.
I don't want that one.
No generosity, cross it off. So maybe unlike how you would do it in a company, you probably you start crossing off and erasing things, because again, you're trying to whittle down to what is our mission statement.
Yes.
And so I say to them, instead of crossing off, just circle. So first start with the things that just pop out at you. They resonate most with you. So then they'll circle some. And I'll say that on average, people will circle probably between 10 to 15. Like they're pretty good at getting to 10 to 15. And then but at 10, they don't want to get any of them off anymore.
So like, do I have to get rid of kindness or charity or love? Like which one do I get? Which one do I dump here? Right?
Exactly. It really like stretches your brain. So then, I engage in exercises with them around, okay, kindness. Is that important to you? If you were going to say one last thing to your kid as they're getting out of the car, would you say, be kind to somebody today?
Yeah.
Or would you say be inclusive to someone today?
Yeah.
Or would you say be thoughtful around something today, right? Like, and so they're like, so then if I give them those choices, be kind, be thoughtful, be inclusive, pick one.
Yeah.
Right. Because inherently, if you're being inclusive, they'll start to play games. They'll be like, okay, well, I guess if I say inclusive, then that is kind. So that kind of gets two of those together.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So then they can circle that. So then you just basically, I think, just really start asking yourself the question, if there was one thing that I felt was most important today between two, right? And that could be like love or generosity. Oh gosh, I don't know. I really like being generous. Okay, well, how do you show love?
Yeah.
Well, I show love by I do things or I give things. Okay, so maybe love. Is love too broad? Do you feel you need to, and so those are kind of questions. This is subjective. There's no right or wrong.
Yes.
It's just truly, and I also say we go through ages and stages and reasons and seasons. That's one of my quotes. And I say that a lot about just relationships. And that could mean child friendships. That can mean husband and wife. That can mean also child to parent, right? Maybe the values that you pushed really, really hard between the ages of 5 and 8, there's still values to you, but maybe now that they're teenagers, you feel like it's not that our values as a family have changed. How they show up might, like responsibility, right? At 5 years old, sure, we want our kids to be responsible, but it feels maybe less consequential than it does at 15 years old.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So so you might reframe a sentence in your mission statement to say, in our family, we lead with our heart and we make responsible choices, right? It's just an example, because you might say, our values are our values, but their expression of them has shifted a little bit because we've been through a terminal illness, or our kids are older, or we've experienced a horrendous loss. And we realize that we want to value quality time more than we had been in the past. We were very focused on character traits, but now we really want to focus on the way that we spend time together.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not like you change as a person, you evolve with your values and how they're expressed. But it's amazing to have the anchor of doing that when you have a very young family, if possible. It's never too late, but when they're young, because then, those are like the young traits are like the character building traits.
Right.
This is to the core who I want you to be. And as they get older, it starts to be like, okay, we've got the core down. How do we express that?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Love it. So it is great. And I want to go back to your one example, your two examples. One was let them stay out. One was nope, sorry, you don't get any, the second helping off the table. Literally, but what you're really talking about there is not only defining those, which, by the way, thank you for sharing the insights on defining those, because what you just walked us through is so valuable. I mean, I've gone through lots of exercises with mission statements and values, and it was just beautiful how you did that. So thank you. But then keeping that in the forefront of your mind and applying it, whether that means applying it, where you're allowing something, or applying it where you're not allowing something. And what's been your experience in how to help parents, keep that present and not just, not have it be an exercise we did one afternoon and it was like,
it's in a book
I
somewhere.
think we did that like a few years ago, like, what was that all about? So
yes. Well, I'm laughing because the families that I've worked with, I know they'll be like, I know. We have to refer back to the family value statement. But I actually encourage people to, which is funny, I moved and I don't have mine up right now. I just realized I don't have mine up. But have it up. Whether that's put it on a refrigerator, frame it and put it somewhere central in your house. Make it a part of your daily life. Like I love how in it feels like, I don't know, the last decade or so, it's become very popular, maybe to go to like Hobby Lobby or other places where they have these frames and they have sayings on them, right? In this house and in this family, and I love that, because I know growing up, I never saw anything like that. Not only just not in my house, but anybody's. I didn't ever see words of affirmation up
around. Yeah.
And there is something about that. And truly, when you step into someone's space or you come back home after a long day at school and you see whatever it is, whether that's faith, whether that's laughter, whether that's hugs and snuggles, unconsciously, it does impact you. You kind of go, oh, okay. In this family, this is a playful family. They like to play, right? Or in this family, they are very affectionate. They like to really show love through affection. You can do that, not just through your words, but through what's in your house, through the way that you greet people at the door, the way that you, comment about something that you notice. There are many ways to show your values besides just saying them.
Yeah.
Or even just, having words on the wall. I love having, though, words or symbols on the wall, right. And I know in our house, we definitely have symbols, and you take it for granted. Let's say if you have a heart or you have a cross or you have, Star David, whatever it might be, you have a symbol.
Yeah.
You take for granted what that means. But every day that you see that, it does actually shift you. There's a shift.
Yes. Yeah.
Little shift right there. Oh, I saw it. Oh, yeah. And it could be, oh, you made me this. Like my kids could come into my office and see that I display, the little pieces of arts and the trinkets that they make for me. Right. I value you. That's what this says. I value this. Yes. This piece matters to me. You matter to me. And so just remembering that as well, the psychology of hanging up kids' pictures, hanging up their artwork, having symbols that represent your values are other ways to instill what is important, what guides us.
I love that. This constant reminder and these symbols of things that are, stay in front of us. It's so beautiful. I'm suddenly remembering, Margie and I once visited a guy who's extremely successful, has a holding company and, businesses all over the world. And we sat down to dinner and he had these placemats, dinner placemats. And I looked at him and he had the family mission statement and some family values and stuff. So it's like, he said, oh yeah, every time we sit down to dinner, we see the reminder of what's important to our family. And I had forgotten about that until you just said that. Like,
I'm going to take that and I'm going to spread that. I'm going to do it for myself too. Maybe at Thanksgiving even. I love
Thanksgiving. Have a little place. Right. I'll see if I can find. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to call him and ask him where he got those produced because it was really cool.
Laminated so that it wouldn't get messy with the food.
Yeah, because we have a philosophy that you always have 2 gallons of milk on the table, one to spill and one to drink. So it's like.
See, let me tell you something about that. Let me give you direct, immediate feedback about that. If I come to your house and have dinner with you in Arkansas, and I see those 2 gallons of milk, you know what that means to me as your guest? It means you accept mistakes.
Yeah.
You understand that life is messy. You are forgiving of accidents.
Right.
There's no, right. And truly, but it's a simple 2 gallons of milk, one to spill and one to drink, says to me, I can relax. I don't have to be perfect here.
Yeah.
I love
we'll just love you however
However you come.
Spill
come
the
on
milk
over.
all you want. So let's talk for just a minute about the micro things, because you talked about this, being present. I was reminded of, I don't know, a couple of years ago, Margie and I were on one of our honeymoon trips. We go off together all the time. And so we're sitting in the airport, we're at the restaurant, and the booth across from us is this beautiful family. I mean, just these 2 little towhead girls that were just cute as a button. And mom and dad were both on their phones and just locked into this, whatever was on that phone, social media or text, whatever it was. And at first the girls sat there and just were kind of quiet. And then it was like, you could tell they wanted a little attention from mom and dad. And so pretty soon they are all over. They're crawling on the table. They're throwing things. And shockingly, I mean, mind-blowingly, and I'm not judging them because I have no idea what was going on in their life or where they're at, but mom and dad hardly flinched until it reached a boiling point, and then dad freaked out, and then the girls ended up crying in tears, right? And Margie and I are watching this as parents of 11 children being like, and I just was like, just give them some attention. Like, come on, I want to come out of my skin at these people. But I'm reminded that we have so many distractions. Like, what did you say? You said it's so cool. we're distracted, we're busy, and we're stressed. And, so how do we turn that around and become present and engaged? What have you seen is helpful? And what are some of the barriers that we face in our world today? Like you deal with so many parents, like what are some of the barriers that a lot of parents face in doing that?
Yeah, I mean, this is really almost the core, one of the core features of when I wrote Mommy Burnout. I mean, really what I was looking to do was to understand how chronic stress was showing up in women's lives. Why did I consistently see the same pattern and the same kind of words they were using to describe their lives? And so I really researched the history of motherhood. Are we the most stressed mothers there ever were? Were mothers before us stressed? How did they deal with it? I was very, very interested and curious. And so one of the things that the research really steered me toward, and I really try to share this with everybody, is this notion of being busy. When we have a lot of choices and when we are multitasking, right? Multitasking actually is ineffective. And it's not the right use of the brain. The brain actually is not really set up to multitask the way that we think. We're very proud of ourselves when we can, right? And I'm sure, like for you, Marjorie, of course, I'm sure can be a master at multitasking, right? And what I say to people is it's a tool in your back pocket. When I need to multitask, sure, I can multitask just like any other mom. I whip it out and I can do all the things at once. But I use it like in case of emergency kind of thing.
Love
right? But in my general way of being, I try to focus on monotasking, which is the way that the brain is designed to work at its optimal way, and also the way that relationships are formed. When I am doing X, I'm doing X. I'm not doing X, Y, and Z, because then I skimp out on Y and Z. Something's not going to go well. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to be short. I'm going to be irritable. I'm going to be very put off if you distract me, right? Because I'm doing 10 things. Don't you see? I'm doing 10 things here at once. Don't you see? Right? Like it's like this feeling of I'm making breakfast, lunch, helping with the last minute homework, trying to put on my own makeup because I've got to get to, work myself, like trying to get kids on the bus. And so there is a way, and it changes the tempo of a family when we can say, I'm going to get up, get ready, put my makeup on, be dressed, and then I'm going to come down.
Wow.
Then I'm going to, assign so-and-so to do breakfast while I am doing lunch, because I know my kids can put an English muffin in the toaster or the waffles in the toaster, right? And that's part of it too. Which is when I'm looking at the stress in a family, we have this mentality, we meaning our collective society in mostly North America, that says, I'll just do it. It's easier and faster. I'll just do it.
Yeah.
True, yeah.
Right? Like, I'll just put the shoes on and tie the shoelaces instead of teaching them how to do it.
Right.
I'll just throw the waffles in because I don't even know, they might burn them, or I'll just do it. It'll be faster.
Yeah.
I'll unload the dishwasher because I can get those dishes and I can do it in 5 minutes. And while all of that is true at times, again, I take it out of my back pocket when I need to. When I need to, I'll go, you know what? Don't even worry about it. Get in the car. I'll finish cleaning up the kitchen real quick. Because I can probably do it in 5 minutes versus maybe the 10 minutes it might take the kids. But what I'm doing is I'm doing so much harm. First and foremost, I'm robbing the kids the opportunity to have that sense of competence that every child needs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? They wouldn't say, oh yes, please, Mimi, I want to clean dirty dishes.
Right.
But they would say, yes, I want to be competent. I want to know how to do things. I can do it on my own. I do. Right? I do.
Yeah.
I do starts at 2 years old. I do.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't end the I do, right? We're like that even as adults. That's why we don't accept help from people.
Right.
No, I got it. Marjorie, do you need me to pick up the kids this afternoon?
No,
I got it.
I'm good. I'll figure it out.
Right? I got it. I can do it. No. Well, why not? I'm going right past your house. It would be no problem. Right? And we tend to feel bad. Oh, well, why would I let her take my kid home? Like, she's busy too. She's busy. I'm busy. We're all busy. And so I'm putting in a lot of different concepts into one so that people can see why this sounds really basic. Like, oh yeah, so she came on and said that we're so busy. I want you to understand how it impacts relationships, how it impacts our stress level, how it impacts even, honestly, intimacy. I want human beings feel good when we help out, when we help others. It's almost selfish. We get more benefit. The research shows it every time. Me helping you drive your kids somewhere is actually more beneficial to me than it is to you. Right? And so you are robbing me of an opportunity if I say, what can I do to help you? Or, how can what can I do this morning? Let me do it. Take me up on it.
Hello.
So I would say that busy and that stress, the stress is, we're at record stress levels. We are record mental health. We are in a mental health crisis. Stress is the root cause of the top three things, which are anxiety, depression, and PTSD.
Wow.
Stress, right? You have stress and unmitigated, unmanaged stress. We have stress every day of our lives. Every single one of us. It's a normal part of life. It's when we don't know how to manage it and contain it, ask for help, receive the help. When we think we can just handle it on our own, we get isolated, we get lonely, and we get disconnected from those who we desperately really want to be connected with. But if you're not living in truth and you're not connected with other people, there is a lack of integrity within that relationship that will be felt. And loneliness and isolation are at the root cause of that stress.
And isn't it crazy that we as parents can live in a household with, with loved ones all around us and feel isolated, stressed, depressed, and disconnected? It's like,
wow.
The irony of it is just mind blowing and a little bit maddening, right?
Yes. But because to be in connected relationship with somebody requires more than just physical proximity.
Yes.
Right. So to be in a real connected relationship with you, I need to be vulnerable. I need to be honest. I need to be engaged with you. I need to be present. I need to be able to not just tell you what's happening in my life, but also listen to what's happening in your life. So if you think about what it takes to actually avoid loneliness, depression, and isolation, and when you break it down, you go, oh yeah, I can see how that would happen.
Right.
Because it takes a lot of little micro steps to be connected and feel like you are in relationship and in community. Yeah. Because that's what the opposite of being lonely would be. I'm connected. I feel I belong. I understand my purpose. I wake up every day with a sense of esteem. That's what burnout is. Burnout is you eventually feel you are no longer good at your job, whatever your job is. Mm-hmm. It could be being a parent. It could be being the vice president of a company. No matter what your job is, it's the physical and emotional exhaustion that results from becoming cynical because you are no longer good at doing your job. Mm-hmm. That is the World Health Organization definition of burnout. And so you can be burning out or you can become lonely in a robust household filled with people because you're actually not feeling like, I'm a good mom. I'm a good dad. I'm not a good partner. I'm not really listening. Yeah. I'm not even sharing with you what's happening. Like that costs us. That's a cost to us when we're not sharing with someone what's really happening for us.
Yeah. And I think that, so what I love about what you're saying is the clarity there. We really have this choice in our families to be distracted and stressed or connected. And there are tools to do it a totally different, better way. Right. And like what you're talking about here about, removing this busy badge, allowing other people to help at times, being vulnerable and opening up. I mean, it does seem like work on the front end, but like most things, I think that there's a little bit of a societal lie that it's like, that's a lot of work and it's really hard. And how do I figure that out? And I'll just do it on my own. And the lie there is that that's a better way, right? Yep. It is actually in the beginning, it's a little more, we know this, it's a little more work to teach your child how to do the kitchen, but in the long run, it's not harder. It's a lot easier, as a matter of fact, because the connection, the love, and the self-esteem, and all the things there. Mm-hmm. So it's really powerful. I wonder, if you're a stressed, distracted, disengaged, busy parent, what's an initial high leverage step that they can take to start to escape that downward spiral? Because I think it is a downward spiral, because like you said, it's like the stress leads to PTSD, anxiety, depression, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just unmanaged stress. It's like a funnel moving people down to the bottom of the swamp. Really.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things is, there's a lot to say, but when we stop normalizing the term "I'm so stressed," like if you said to me, "How are you?" and I say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so stressed out," there's a very good chance that you'll say back to me, "Yeah, me too." Right. We've now had this normalizing. Oh, I'm stressed and you're stressed. And when I do certain presentations, I talk to companies actually around the world, because now people care about the mental health of their employees, which is, new. And so I'm very fortunate that I get to do that. I say, what we're both normalizing when we have that exchange of I'm so stressed and you're so stressed. See you later. Have a good day. Right. Yeah. What we're normalizing is, I have a higher chance for having a heart attack and stroke. I have hypertension. I am more likely to get cancer, chronic disease. Like, what if instead of saying, I'm so stressed, I said to you, well, I have hypertension right now, and, I have a greater likelihood of developing diabetes, right? Wouldn't you have such a different reaction?
I'd be like, wow, you're like,
you wouldn't want to agree with it.
Right, yeah.
Right.
You wouldn't say, oh, that's great. Me too. I'm right on the cusp of depression and a heart attack too.
Yes. Like, great. We'll have a good rest of your day.
Right. Exactly. Right.
Right. So if we can just stop and realize what we're saying, right? Now, I don't mean you have a stressful morning and that happens once a week. That's different. I'm talking about chronic stress, right? Yeah. I am chronically stressed. When I am chronically stressed, I truly have a greater likelihood of reducing my lifespan, of having hypertension, stroke, heart disease, and diabetes. That's just straight off the bat.
Yeah.
That's not deep science. That's just, we know that. That's mental and physical history, health coming together. We know that. So we need to start it. Like, we talk a lot about destigmatizing mental health. I think it starts as simple as just, let's stop accepting that we're saying things that are bad for our health. If you said, well, what are you doing about that stress? And I said, oh, I'm smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. You wouldn't say, well, that sounds like a good idea. Right.
Like, wow, good therapy. Nice job.
Right. No, right. You would just be like, well, I wonder if there's something else you could be doing. Right. And so I do think that the normalization of stress is a real problem in our society. Yeah. We just have normalized burnout. We have normalized stress. We have normalized hospital fantasies. That came up when I was, I did a TEDx talk, Why Moms Are Miserable. And that I put that in there. There are actually tens of thousands of women today, right now, that have a hospital fantasy that says, please God, let me get into a minor accident or maybe get COVID so bad or whatever that I have to go to the hospital because it's the only break I'll get.
Oh no.
Right? That is the hospital fantasy. Let me just get into just a couple days in the hospital. Nurses will take care of me. And like, nobody's going to ask me to do anything. And I don't even have to stand up because it's the dread. The second I get home, I feel, because we do feel it physically, you do feel the physical, you feel muscle tension, you feel these things. And so we've normalized it too much. And we're also using we're using maladaptive coping skills, as we would call it. And that could be smoking cigarettes. That could be drinking too much wine. That can be scrolling on social media for hours.
Right.
Right. Yeah. There are things that we are doing. We're attempting to manage the stress, but we're doing it in really ineffective and unhealthy ways. Mm-hmm. So the number one way, as I did my research, and I didn't know in the very beginning, this was, going on almost 10 years ago, but I didn't know in the beginning what the answer was going to be. But if I could tell you one thing that is the healthiest thing for you mentally and physically, out of all the things you could be doing, diet and exercise and all of the things, it's social connection.
Wow.
It is unequivocally social connection.
Wow.
So they say there are studies that say that being lonely or socially disconnected is equivalent to smoking a half a pack of cigarettes a day or eating, I think it's like 2 double bacon cheeseburgers. I don't know how they got to this, but right, like the strain on your heart, it also reduces your life by 4 years. There's such a strain on our heart and our physical and mental health when we are not socially connected. So when I did the TEDx talk, Why Moms Are Miserable, the answer was because we get married, we have kids, and we lose our friendships. We say, I'm too busy. Oh, Marjorie, I'd love to get together, but I'm too busy. Oh, I can't do coffee because I've got a meeting and I've got a deadline I'm working on, right? Or I've got to just go home and clean my messy house. And because we've gotten into this habit and we all accept it, oh yeah, well, I was busy too. Why did I just ask?
We normalize it. Yeah.
We normalize it. And so, you know, there's other reasons as well. We are more transient. So people, because of opportunities, I say it's one of the unintended consequences of the women's movement is that we do have all these choices where we can go to school and where we can work. And because women, the way we are wired, we're like, oh, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to do that and raise a family. We move around more now. So we don't plant down our roots. We don't have our extended families near us. We aren't raising kids with family or a village. We are doing it on our own, and we're outsourcing with nannies and au pairs. We're outsourcing the help that we naturally needed. That's why we were usually raising kids in tribes and in families. So there are many reasons. It's not just friendships. It's also family connections, just relationships in general. Why so many people, and it's not just women, this is not just a women's issue, men as well feel disconnected. And we don't realize that that's adding to our sense of unhappiness or depression or loneliness or irritability or dissatisfaction with family life. Just general, just like, is this all? That's a comment I used to hear a lot. Is this all there is? You know, I've got the husband and I've got the kids and I'm really not happy. Is this it?
This is it, right?
Yeah, is this it? Because this isn't as great as I thought it was going to be. And so I wanted to answer the question, why? Why wasn't it as great as women thought it was going to be? And it really, it's not the only answer, but the leading answer is our lack of social and emotional connection. Connection.
Incredible answer, incredible study. And I'm reminded I have one of my clients is just had some astonishing success recently, and he's the #1 influencer on LinkedIn now, and you know, he's all this, you know, fame and social influence and all this stuff's happening in his life, right? And he said to me the other day, he said, you know, my friends just stopped calling because I just told, you know, every time they talk to me, it's like, hey, I'm too busy. So they're afraid to even ask anymore. Can we go and hang out and, you know, go to dinner or spend time as couples or whatever? He's like, they just quit. He's like, and I don't know what to do about it. And I'm like, oh, you have to fix this.
Yes. Well,
I got science to show him. I'm gonna prove back it up.
We do have the science. I mean, there really, you could show it to him, but I just want to go with that example because there is a phenomenon that when somebody is successful or they've maybe achieved something, when you talk to people at the very top of their game, even including him, and you ask them, so who's in your circle of trust?
Yeah.
Those people don't usually have more than 5 people in that circle of trust. If the circle is small.
Yeah.
It's really small because so maybe you're just like everybody else. Maybe you just graduated college, whatever. You're a young adult. Your circle's pretty big. You've got the neighbors, the college friends, the high school friends, the people you do a happy hour with after work. Like circle's pretty big. And then it funnels. You get married, got smaller, right? Now it goes like this. And then once you start reaching the top of your game, people are lonely. That's saying it's lonely at the top.
Yes.
It is true, right? And when you start looking from the outside, you go, oh, they have a career and they've got their family, they've got young kids, they've got sports on the weekends. And you start on the outside, those people start going, so these are all the reasons why I can't reach out anymore. I can't be in relationship with you anymore because I don't have all that going on. I mean, I've got a little, but not all that. And so I do think that people are, the more successful or the more they engage they are with their family lives, that's a measure of success as well. sometimes the more their outer circle just goes away.
Wow.
And I think that for people who can do it well, their circles are still small, but they're tighter.
Yeah.
They're more intimate. And so that's, I think like for that person, he should take inventory of who do I really do feel is missing? Like, who do I want to be in the small circle of influence? And then how do I strengthen those relationships? To me, that's key.
That's awesome. Well, Sheryl, this has been incredible. Like,
we've learned so much. Thank you.
I'm gonna try to twist your arm to have a redo here, a round 2, because there's a lot of stuff that you've unpacked, and I can tell you've got a lot more. In fact, yeah, just incredible what you've shared. So thank you very, very much. And I wonder, I mean, you obviously have a lot of wisdom. So what's the best way for, people who aren't familiar with your world to get inside there and to gain some of this? And I know you've got a book and a course. What do you think is the best way to jump into your world? What's a starting point?
Yeah, I think, if people go to my website, which is just DrSherylZiegler.com, there is where you can see my online course, Mommy Burnout, my book. I'm working on a second book that I'm so excited about right now, which is really focused on middle childhood. It's a parenting book about, really just 6 to 12-year-olds, raising 6 to 12-year-olds and setting them up for the teen years. So that's the intention of that book.
Yeah.
I do a lot of media segments. Like you said, I was laughing in the beginning when you introduced me. I do at least 3 a week, and they are basically how to talk to your kid about fill in the blank.
Yeah.
So if you want a quick, 3 to 4 minute, 4 at tops, they're usually 3.5 minutes of just, how to talk to a kid about war, how to talk to a kid about a mass shooting, how to talk to a kid about divorce, all these different things.
Right.
My most recent one was just, how to set up Thanksgiving to be positive and not focus on negatives, whatever it might be. That's all housed there. So,
awesome.
I have some social media. I'm not huge on social media, but people can definitely just follow me and really get to see, I think, some of the work that I'm trying to put out in as many places as possible. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, we will send as many people as we can to your site, and hopefully they'll gain, the value that we've got out of it today. So thank you very, very much. We really appreciate it. And I've just learned a ton, and I've taken 3 pages of notes. So we really appreciate it. So good. And we'll send, so for everyone listening to this, like, Dr. Sheryl Ziegler, go to the site, check it out, get a hold of her, a copy of her book, and look at the course there. I know the course is amazing. And your course really focuses on an issue that's huge for so many people. And it's like mother-daughter relationships and helping daughters through that critical period of their life from that 6 to 12, 13 year age, space. So invaluable resource there because wow, we know that is a tricky phase of life. It's like, oh, by the way, a few things are about to change.
Yeah, just a few, like everything.
Everything. Yeah, good. So,
yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it very much. So, all right,
Thank
bye.
you.
Thank you, guys. Bye now.